Hi, and welcome to Can I Be Honest with Megan Coleman. On today's episode, I sit with Kaitlin Smith. She tells me about how she went from being someone who was never interested in marriage or having children to becoming a wife and a stepmom. She explains how meeting Andy and Kylie changed her life and opens up to me about her struggles with anxiety and depression. She is able to explain hardships that step-parents face that I had never even considered, so I'm excited for her story to be heard.
Hi!
Again.
Yes, back again. Here we go. So I would like for you to start out wherever you're comfortable and just explain your story of how you became a mom.
Okay. So the story goes back 4 years ago. Actually around the same time, 4th of July, that was when Andy and I met, but it was kind of like re-meeting because we had met each other previously, but we hadn't talked for a really long time. And he was actually at the same party I was at, a 4th of July party, and he walked in and I was like, oh damn, like you look good. And I don't know, ever since that night on the 4th of July 4 years ago, we kind of became inseparable. And you know, I knew his situation. I knew he had a child, and my friends kind of teased me and they're like, oh, what, are you gonna be a stepmom now? And I was like, no, what are you guys talking about? You know, like we just started dating. But it was kind of, you know, crazy for me to think, like, as we began dating, like, he does have a kid and that could be a possibility for me. And then about, I think it was, so in October, we met in July. In October, things were getting more serious, and we decided, kind of due to life circumstances and just where we're at, that we were gonna move in together. And that's when it kind of really became a reality for me, that I was going to be, you know, stepping into this role in Kai's life. And she was a little bit over 2 at the time. And after we moved in together, it was really difficult in the beginning because she really rejected me, which was totally understandable because, you know, she was very little, and we hadn't had a ton of time together. You know, we had met and we had spent time together, but it was still new for all of us. It was a totally new dynamic. And you know, she really pushed back for about, I would say, 6 months. You know, anytime Andy would leave the room, she would start crying, and she really like clung to him during that time. And I didn't try to push anything, but I really tried to, you know, just let her know, like, hey, I'm not trying to steal your dad from you. You know, I'm here to get to know you and to build a relationship with you. And it definitely took a lot of time and a lot of work, and there were a lot of nights I spent crying in the beginning, wondering, you know, can I do this? Like, is it ever going to get better? Are we ever going to find mesh together and kind of create a family? But after about 6 months, you know, she kind of started warming up to me, and she's like, okay, like, you play Barbies with me, that's awesome. And you watch, she loves Shrek. Shrek's like her favorite. Shrek's like we would watch Shrek together, nothing like bonding over an ogre. And, you know, I remember, you know, especially in the beginning, it was the little moments that you really, like, would make me hopeful. Like, I remember just going back to that same example, like Andy left one time and she didn't cry, and I was like, whoa, like, this is good, okay, we're getting somewhere.
Were you afraid in the beginning that her pushback and just the relationship, having such a hard time getting a relationship with her, were you afraid that that was going to affect you and Andy, or did it affect you and Andy in any way?
Oh yeah, I was definitely concerned, like, what if she just never accepts me? You know, what if she never, what is that gonna make Andy feel like towards me? I mean, luckily he was very supportive, but it was really my own insecurities that I was battling with that whole time, you know, just because I've seen so many horror stories about step parenting and the way things can go. it was hard, and I was very, very alone in the beginning. I really didn't have very many people I could turn to. Not only was I young, so most of my friends weren't in that same position,
how old were you?
I was 23. So I was very young, and I didn't have anyone else I could really relate to. But I did have my own stepmom, which was huge for me because she was, you know, she'd been there. I mean, granted, our circumstances were very different, but she was someone that I was able to really turn to and lean on, which was huge for me. But other than that, you know, I didn't have a support system. There were a lot of difficult feelings that I was trying to navigate through in the beginning. And, you know, the entire time ever since then, it's kind of like we go through these phases, you know. And I think the hard thing is when I'm going through a time with Kai where I feel like maybe we're like butting heads or not getting along, there's that insecurity where it's like, you know, when let's say you and Maddox are going through a hard time, well, you're always going to be his mom at the end of the day, right? So you kind of have that security, whereas in that step-parent relationship, you don't have that same security. So you always wonder, you know, when they get mad at you, like, are you gonna hold this grudge against me? Like, is this gonna affect your love for me? Which I don't think is the reality of it. But you do kind of have that fear that you don't have that same bond, that biological bond, and you feel kind of like your relationship could be, I don't know, that there's not that same permanence, you know. So it's scary sometimes, and it's been hard when there are those times when I feel like we're not on the same page or we're butting heads, and then I'm worried about our relationship. I mean, at the end of the day, I have unconditional love for her.
Of course,
but I worry, you know, does she have that unconditional love for me, you know? So it's, you know, every day presents new obstacles and new challenges, but the great thing is that, you know, over time the bond is just going to continue to get stronger, which will help in those times when, you know, I'm sure as a teenager we're gonna face a lot of hurdles.
How much time had passed? You said about 6 months.
Yeah, so at that point it had probably been almost a year
since you met her.
Yes.
Okay, so she's like 3 now.
Yeah.
And then you guys live together. You're a constant in her life. She's starting to understand that, like, you're there.
Yeah.
And you're there to stay.
Yeah.
You guys are getting a little bit closer. So where are you and Andy at now in your relationship? Had you talked about marriage? Was that something that you wanted?
Yes, we had definitely talked about marriage, which for me was this like total 180 because previously I had said, like, I'm not gonna get married or have kids. So it was like this whole 180 on my life. And, you know, looking back and thinking, like, why didn't I want to have kids, and why didn't I want to get married? And I think a huge part of it was that deep down I didn't feel worthy of that because I had a low opinion of myself. And so I think that was kind of where that was stemmed from, that I didn't feel like I was worth being loved and having a family like that. So it was, you know, it was kind of something hard to wrestle with, thinking, oh, this person does love me, and this person does find me worthy, and they do want to build a family with me. And I think, you know, in the beginning, I struggled with that. You know, sometimes it would cause problems. Like, he's like, hey, you know, I do love you, and this, like, you are enough, and you have to believe that. But, you know, as we started getting closer, I mean, and then Kai and I really started bonding, it really he kind of rescued me from that negative mindset, and kind of helped build up my worth and show me that this was something that I deserved to have. I think another big part with the marriage was that it would, I knew once we were married, maybe people would start taking me more seriously as a figure in her life, you know? because at that point I was just dad's girlfriend, right?
Yeah.
I wasn't, which not to downplay, because some people never get married, but
Right.
they're definitely still stepmoms.
Yeah.
But it was, so it was, you know, that was a factor that it would kind of bring stability for all of us and into Kai's life, and I would become, you know, really more than dad's girlfriend.
Right.
And I think the other thing that a lot of people don't realize or think about is, you know, no little girl dreams about being a stepmom one day, right? Like, that's not their dream. There's a lot of things that I had to accept that would never be a reality with me and Andy. We would never go through the experience of having a baby together for the first time. You know what I mean? Not that it's going to make it any less special when we do have one, but, you know, those are all things that a lot of people go through and experience for the first time together that we would never have together. So that was hard, you know. That was that's something that I know a lot of other stepmoms have struggled with. But on the flip side of that, you know, I wouldn't change our situation for the world, you know. With Kai, you know, I'm so glad that this is where we're at and that this is what we built. It's not perfect and it's not maybe ideal to some people, but, you know, it's us, and it's, you know, now I'm so in love with our little family, and I think everything has worked out exactly the way that it was supposed to. And, you know, I feel like the universe really brought the three of us together for a reason. In a way, when you're a step parent, you have to let go of some control over your life, right? Because it's not just about you and your husband and what you want. There's a lot of other factors going on. And for example, if Andy and I wanted to get up and move to Texas tomorrow, we couldn't do that, right? So there's kind of like that aspect of, I think, the art of letting go, right? You have to kind of be able to give up some control over your life and give up some, you know, of those preconceived notions of where your life is going to go. There's a whole team of people around Kai, like raising her, helping her become an amazing little adult. And I think something that a lot of people don't maybe realize is that a lot of times as a step parent, you feel like you kind of get treated like a second-class citizen. Like, you're having a conversation with someone, you're like at the park, and, oh, is this your daughter? It's my stepdaughter. Oh, you're the stepmom. You know what I mean? People kind of really, stepmoms face a lot of scrutiny, and like every role of a stepmom that has ever been portrayed in a movie, they're the evil stepmom, right? So society has this idea of this evil stepmom figure, and it's really hard to kind of prove people otherwise, you know. And it's kind of funny because a lot of my friends and people that I've met, after they see Kai and I together, they're like kind of blown away. They're just like, wow, like, you guys have such a good bond, and like, you're such a great stepmom to her. But it's like shocking to them. You know what I mean? Like, they're shocked. They're like, whoa, this is so weird. And I'm like, no, it can be like this. You know, it doesn't have to be this super like volatile relationship between stepchild and step-parent.
Where do you think those relationships would come from? Like, could you have seen yours going that way? Or, I mean, I feel like for you, like, that just wasn't an option, so it wasn't gonna go there. But like, could you see opportunity where you're like, if I like fed into this insecurity or whatever it may be, this could totally go south?
Yeah, I mean, of course I was never going to be a step monster, but I can, I think what happens a lot of times with some stepmoms is they are holding on to a lot of resentment over the situation, and the resentment gets directed at the child, you know what I mean? When maybe it's not even really about the child. But that's for them kind of, I think, the easiest target, which is no excuse for them treating kids like that. But I think that, I think that resentment plays a huge part, you know, and I think that kind of goes back to the bitterness that, you know, their husband had a life before them and was married before them, or whatever.
Which would be tough to, I mean, it's a reminder every single day.
Because it's not like, you know, in a normal relationship like you and Peter are interacting with your exes on a daily basis, you know. So it is, I think that might kind of factor into it.
And how is that relationship?
Which one?
With Jessica. Kylie's mother.
Yes. We have a fantastic relationship, and literally just like 2 nights ago we were talking about it. We're like, we're definitely not the norm, you know what I mean? And it wasn't always like that. In the beginning, we didn't have a good relationship, but I think that was because we were both going through, each of us were going through something hard, a new situation, a new dynamic, and it was hard on both of us. And I think what we eventually ended up doing was just kind of, you know, having grace with each other and understanding where each of us were. And you know, it was like, hey, I'm not trying to be Kai's mom. I never will be. That's you. That's your role. I'm trying to build my own special relationship with Kai. And I'm sure she, you know, recognized that. And now, you know, we'll text and talk about, you know, just send each other cute pictures of Kai, or, hey, you know, Kai's going through this. What's your opinion? And something that I love so much that she does that is, you know, she'll text me and say, hey, this is going on, like, what do you think? What are your thoughts? And like, the fact that she values my opinion so much and sees me as another one of Kai's parents is, it's such a beautiful thing, and such a rare thing that, you know, she has this respect for me, and it means so much to me, and I tell her that a lot, you know, that I'm so grateful for that. Like I said, I know a lot of other stepmoms now, and that's definitely very rare, and a lot of them are like, I'm super jealous that you have that, you know. So
did that take more work on your separate ends, or more work together, or was it like a balance of both?
It was probably a balance of both. I mean, I can't speak for her and what her journey was with it, but for myself, it was definitely a lot of work within myself, letting go of my ego and letting go of my pride, and recognizing who is this about at the end of the day. It's about Kai. It's about what is going to benefit her, what's going to make her life better. Is her life going to be better if we show up for a school event and we're like standing across the room like mean mugging each other, you know? No, if we're all together talking and laughing, like, that's going to be better for her. You know, that's what's going to make her life better and make things easier for her, which Kai's already in a hard position. That's already tough that her parents aren't together. So let's try, you know, I think of that saying, like, it takes a village. Because all 3 of us work full time. So, you know, we have grandparents helping, and like, there are just these times when I sit back and I see all of us like here together raising Kai, and I'm like, this is so cool, you know what I mean? Like, that even though maybe the situation's not ideal for Kai, that she can see that all these people around her love her and just want the best for her, and are trying their hardest to work together to give her the best life possible. I think it's like a really beautiful thing what you guys are doing. And I mean, obviously I only watch from social media, so like I have no idea what's like going on behind the scenes, but just what I see, I'm like, wow, that's really inspiring to other people, I'm sure. I want to be the best mom possible, right? And something that kind of happened during that time that was hard for me was I threw myself so completely into the role of stepmom that I felt like I really lost my identity. And I lost friends during that time because they were on such a different life path than I was. And, you know, I kind of just was just like stepmom. That was my role. Like, there was nothing else outside of that. And that was hard for me. You know, I kind of went from one extreme to the other. And so I ended up kind of having to be like, okay, I need to get back to me, you know what I mean? And I knew it wasn't good for me, for my mental health, like to just, I was feeling very alone at the time, and I didn't really even feel like I knew who I was outside of being Kai's stepmom. I kind of had to take a step back and start, you know, just rediscovering myself, who I was, and so in September.
So this is while planning a wedding?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And I had a wedding planner, which was my saving grace. Otherwise, there would have been no wedding. I would have thrown some pizza boxes on the table and been like, everyone have at 'em. I mean, we did have pizza at our wedding, but it was nice pizza. It wasn't Papa John's.
Arugula.
Yeah. That's why I always think of fancy pizza. I'm like, it has arugula on it. So yeah, so there was a lot going on. The wedding was, it was extremely hard to plan, just for me personally. Because that's not how my brain works. I'm not an organized person. I'm not someone who like thrives off of that. So we've been married for coming up 2 years. So, oh gosh, I don't even know I can't even think of the timeline, but we've been married for about 2 years now. When we got engaged, obviously I was over the moon thrilled. And like the great thing is, by that point, Kai and I had really built up a pretty strong relationship. So she was super excited about it. And I do think it would have been a lot more challenging if she hadn't been on board, you know. That would have been a lot tougher. And before we got married, we had bought a house together, so we were like making a lot of moves there. We bought a house, we got married. Like I said, there are times that are hard. There are some tough times for sure. And I think one of the things that is hard is, as a step parent, I think it's a classic thing that the step parent thinks that the parent's being too easy on the child, and the parent thinks the step parent's being too hard on the child, you know? So that's something that's kind of been a little tough at times. Like, why are you letting this be okay? You know, like, it's not okay. It's hard too for me, because I've never raised a child before, so I'm like, is this normal, or is this like, you know what I mean? And I'm sure a lot of first-time parents struggle with that. It's like every day is a new journey. I mean, and there's been times where it's hard when it has nothing to do with Kai, and it's more to do with my own mental health struggles. And when those start to come up, you know, it obviously impacts all areas of my life. And when you're a parent, it's hard, because let's say that there's, you know, I'm going through a hard time with my anxiety or depression, and I wake up and I get out of bed, and for me, that I've expended my energy for the day at that point, you know what I mean? But you don't get a break, you don't get a timeout, you know. I don't get to be like, actually everyone, I'm just gonna take the day off from being an employee or a wife or a parent. Like, I just need the day off. It doesn't work like that. So you know, those times I always want to be very open and honest with Kai about my struggles, because I don't want it to be this taboo thing, you know, where oh, don't talk about mom has anxiety, or why is mom, like, why isn't she gone off the couch today, or like, you know, I try to explain it in a way that's she can understand, like, okay, so I have a sickness, but it's in my brain. And, you know, anytime a kid hears that their parent or someone is sick, they get nervous. So I have to I don't want her to be scared. You know, I have this sickness in my head, just like when you break a bone or something like that, but it's always in my head. And some days are good and I feel good and my brain feels good. And some days I feel bad and my, you know, it's hard, my mind hurts, and I have sad feelings inside. So I try to explain it in a way that's not so scary for her, but so that it's not this taboo thing, because there's such a stigma against people who have mental health struggles. And I you know, she's the next generation, and everything that we teach her, you know, she's gonna grow up and bring into the world with her. And, you know, if that's one little mind that could, you know, think differently about mental health struggles, then that's an amazing thing. And, you know, should she ever face struggles of her own, which obviously I hope she never has to, but if that happens, hopefully she can know that she can be open and she can talk about it, and that she can come to us and say, hey, I'm struggling, you know what I mean? So that's huge for me. That's super important to me. She's really at a fun age right now because I feel like we can have real conversations about things, you know?
Yeah.
Like last month, June, was Pride Month, so I bought her a book on Pride, and it talked about Harvey Milk and the history of the rainbow flag, and like that was cool to me that I could have a real conversation with her about that, and it's important to me. So yeah, I never want mental health struggles to be, you know, I want her to be aware of what they are and how she can help people and be aware of them. And
so how long have you been struggling with depression and anxiety?
Probably since I was about 12 years old, so a very long time. And you know, when I was 12, that was 15 years ago. I can do math. So it was a long time ago. Yeah. So it's been a really long time, and back, you know, way back then, 15 years ago, feels like way back when.
Oh, is your back hurting?
Yeah. Like, it was like centuries ago. No one, I mean, at the time, I didn't even know how to put a name on it. I mean, looking back, I have journals from that time, and they're just absolutely heartbreaking, because here I was, this little girl with these horrible feelings and emotions and thoughts that I couldn't put a name on. I couldn't figure out what was going on. And, you know, my parents hadn't had a lot of experience with mental health problems, so they weren't really sure what was going on. And eventually they did take me to see a therapist and a psychiatrist.
How old were you then?
Probably about 16. And then, you know, they started throwing the cocktail of drugs at me to try to get me to figure out what was going on. I remember one time I was in class at school, and I was on, I couldn't even tell you the name, but one of those medications. And I was like falling asleep in class because it was like the side effects were awful. And the hard part is, you know, if you get a scratch, you put a Band-Aid on it. That stops the bleeding. Problem solved. It doesn't work like that when you have anxiety or depression. You know, there's no perfect formula. Everyone's body is going to metabolize the medication differently and going to react differently. So it was hard to try to find something that worked for me. And on top of that, you know, they're throwing all these different diagnoses at you, and, you know, they can never, you know, they can't just do, you know, take an x-ray of you, for example, and be like, oh, there's a tumor, that's the issue, you know? It's like, well, you have some of these symptoms, so maybe it's this, or you have some of these symptoms, so maybe it's that. And that whole time, I'm struggling to come to terms with it, right? I don't want to be the crazy girl, or I don't want to be, you know, labeled or judged. So I was, you know, I didn't talk to anyone about it. I was really just suffering on my own. And during that time, there was so many other things going on in my life, that I ended up, you know, going through some really, like, about 17, 18, I was in a horribly dark place. I had told my dad that I wasn't going to live with him anymore. I was only living with my mom. I was, you know, failing in school, which I had been a straight A, like the perfect student my whole life. So I was just in a really bad place mentally. There was a lot of stuff going on, and then, you know, I kind of was able to get back on track with medication and taking care of myself. I had some people in my life around me who kind of called it out and were like, listen, we see you're struggling, like, you need to get help. So kind of got back on track. And, you know, ever since then, you know, I think slowly I've been getting better, but there are those times when it goes back down and I go through some really tough times, and I'm constantly just learning how to take care of myself, how to better myself. But it's a process, and it's not perfect, and it's messy, and there's times still now, like recently, where I was just, you know, even just a few months ago, I was not in a good place mentally. And now, I mean, it's something I still struggle with, to open up to the people around me and talk to them about it. But I'm trying to get better, because now I have more motivation to be better. You know, I have Kai and I have Andy, so I want to be better for them. Sometimes when, you know, like the depression comes on, it's very slow, and it's just little things start to kind of, you know, slip through the cracks. And then you know, I try to be very aware of myself and my body and my symptoms, but there are times when it kind of just creeps up on me, and then it's like, oh shit, like here I am, I'm, you know, not doing very well at work, I'm, you know, I'm irritable at home, like, and then it kind of just hits you that you're like, oh, here we are again, like, here we go again, you know. But there are things that help, such as just taking my medicine consistently. That's something that I've struggled with ever since I've been on medicine, because what happens when the medicine starts working? You start feeling better, and then you're like, well, I don't need it anymore because I'm doing fine. Well, no, you're doing fine because you're on medication, you know. So it's not just one thing. There's so many different components to being healthy mentally. It's exercising regularly. That's huge for me. When I'm exercising, I feel good, you know, it helps. It's more than just physical, it's definitely mental. Eating well, that's a huge component of it. There's just so many different aspects of being well mentally, and it is a lot of work, but it's worth it, you know. It's worth it for me to be the best version of myself, not only for me but for my family. Let's say like I'm just like in the pits, I'll probably call into work because I can't even get out of bed. I'll probably spend a lot of the day crying and feeling just awful.
Are you crying over your thoughts, or are you crying over like little things that happen that just send you over?
It could be both. I mean, definitely I'm super on edge, so you know, if I knock my coffee over, the world has just ended at that point, you know. Usually at that point, when I'm at like just at the very bottom of the hole, at that point I reach out to someone, you know. Usually I make an appointment with my psychiatrist. And then my medication, that's huge. Like, start taking my medication regularly. And then it's kind of just, you know, it really is for me like the small things. Get up early and take some time to meditate, you know. And those things are hard. It's hard when you're in a hole to make yourself do those things. So that's why it has to be small things. I can't just do a 180 overnight, you know. And it kind of is like this slow just process of like pulling myself out of the pits of, you know, that dark depression. And it's so many different things that play into making me feel better again.
Yeah.
So,
do you ever find yourself like sabotaging your good moods?
Sometimes, yes, because I feel
like beat your depression to the punch.
Yeah. Sometimes I do think you self-sabotage, and almost because you're like, I don't want it to be this good, because if it's this good, like what's when it's bad, it's gonna feel even worse, you know. But what I've learned is a couple things. Is one, I have to have grace with myself, you know. I have to forgive myself. Nobody's perfect. Even people who don't go through mental health problems have bad days with their kids. And then the other thing I think is just remembering to just go back to her. For example, if I have a bad day, the next day I'd be like, hey, Kai, you know, I'm so sorry. I was having a bad day yesterday.
Yeah.
Like, I hope you can forgive me, you know?
Yeah.
You know, just acknowledging that, hey, I wasn't perfect and I had a bad day and I'm sorry if I took that out on you. And then I think that really creates that open line of communication with Kai.
Yeah.
So she can do the same thing.
Yeah.
You know, like, hey, you know, I'm so sorry that I was a total punk yesterday, you know. Please forgive me, let's go to the park or something, you know. I think that's important just in any family, that we can all recognize that we're not perfect, and we can acknowledge our bad days and like have forgiveness and move on.
Yeah. So where have you found support through this? I know you said in the beginning you felt very alone.
Yeah.
And you mentioned, you know, support groups. So where do you go to talk to people now?
So I actually found this online support group of stepmoms, and there's about 4,000 women in this group. And that truly was one of the biggest, most helpful things that I have experienced along my journey in becoming a stepmom. I mean, it's so, like I mentioned earlier, when you haven't gone through it, it's just, you can't relate. And there have been times when I've needed advice, and I needed it from someone who had been there, you know, someone who had traveled that road. And the great thing is, you know, in the group, everyone's not just like sugarcoating things and it's all sunshine and rainbows. Like, you know, they're not afraid to like be like, hey, you need to take a step back and like you need to look at the situation from this way, which is nice to have that, you know, because sometimes you do need to kind of have that where you need to be put in check. And the only person that, you know, can really, like I said, other stepmoms know. They know where you're at. They know where you've been. And the great thing is, you know, all of these women are at different places within their journey. They all come from unique situations. There's so many things that play into, you know, the whole step parenting role. Everyone's come into their stepchild's life at a different point. And, you know, there's all these unique perspectives. And, they were like my saving grace, because I really had no one besides my stepmom to turn to. And it's been so great, and it really feels like this tight-knit community.
And that's on Facebook?
Yes. We wouldn't be in this place today without Andy, the way he supported me. You know, our dynamic wouldn't be what it is. I mean, ever since the very beginning, he has made me feel like an equal, you know, like an equal parent in the situation. He has been so supportive of me and anything. It doesn't matter how small it is. He comes to me and says, hey, this is happening. Is this okay with you? You know what I mean? Because I think like that goes back to that letting go of control over certain aspects of your life. And so I know I see a lot of other people struggle with, well, you know, my husband is making decisions behind my back. He's not consulting me. Like, it feels like I have no control over my own life. And it's never been that way with him. You know what I mean? He's always been, hey, is this okay? This is what's happening, you know. Let me talk to Kaitlin. I need to make sure this is okay with Kaitlin. Like, and that's huge, just because I know one of the really difficult things that I felt in the beginning was feeling like an outsider. You know what I mean? Like, it was Andy and Kai and then me. And he wasn't making me feel like that. It was just my own natural feelings about the situation. So, you know, he's always been very inclusive with me, and he always has reminded me, you know, no, we're a family. Like, you're not on the outside. Like, you know, this is us together. And something that's been important to us is our marriage coming first, which sounds crazy, and people are like, what? Your kids always come first. And I'm like, hold on, let me explain myself. And just what that means for us is like, our marriage is the foundation of our family. You know, if there's cracks in a foundation or if it's broken, you can't build off of that, right? So we have to be solid in order for our family to be good. And, you know, he's always made us a united front. You know, he doesn't ever allow Kai to try to play us against each other. every decision we make it together, and we present it to Kai that way, you know?
Yeah.
So he's just been absolutely amazing through this whole thing, and we wouldn't be where we're at without his support.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, especially as you had mentioned, like, you're someone who never wanted kids, you don't want marriage, so, I mean, obviously it had to take a big person to change your mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I must have really been crazy about it.
It must be pretty nice.
Yeah.
So, do you and Andy want more kids?
Yes, we definitely want more kids. We, you know, within the next couple years, we're definitely going to expand our family. And Kai is just, the thing that I love is she's so excited about it. You know what I mean? She is constantly asking me if I have a baby in my belly. She's like, do you have a baby in your belly? I'm like, no, not yet. And like, even she'll make like little comments. Like, I told her, because we had Andy's friend was staying with us temporarily, and so him and Kai were sharing a bathroom, and then when he left, I was like, okay, now that you have the bathroom back to yourself, like, we'll go to Target and we'll decorate it fun, you know? And she'll be like, yeah, and then one day I'll share it with the baby, and the baby's gonna love what I did with it.
That's so cute.
So, you know, so she's excited about it. We're excited about it. If we have another girl, though, Andy says that's it, because he says Kai and I are enough already, and one more, that's gonna really be pushing it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, definitely want more kids.
Fun. That's great. Well, I'm really happy for you, and your relationships seem to be really thriving right now, and that's great.
Yeah.
And it's really fun to watch you on social media.
Thank
and
you.
Thank you so much for coming and being vulnerable and talking about just your life.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity. I never know how to end it. Yeah.
Like, and okay, bye.
Thank you so much for watching. Remember to like, follow, and subscribe.